This is basically what the internet looked like last night. People getting drunk, busting moves, wearing little panda bear costumes and shit. Listen, folks, I don't care how happy last night's episode of Game of Thrones made you. At some point or another, you're gonna have to start focusing on the fact that Sansa needs to haul ass to get as far away as possible from King's Landing, and Tyrion better lawyer the fuck up. That being said, there is no One Piece review this week because there's no chapter, so you can expect a Hunter 2011 anime episode review on Wednesday. I don't know why I interrupted the intro to this review to say that, but hey, I just thought I would update you in case you were interested. Another thing is that at the end of this review, I will be giving you an explanation as to how Joffrey was poisoned. So if you don't want to be spoiled on how and the who and you know the logistics that went into that final scene, then don't worry, I'll let you know before I start talking about all that stuff so that you can leave the video. Let's get fucking started. First and foremost, this episode, the screenplay for this episode was written by George R.R. Martin, which, in case you didn't know, is the author of the books. So, you know, just the fact that he's an author, a writer by trade, I think a lot of stuff sometimes gets overlooked in terms of like what the author's intention is. So, thematically speaking, if you look at the different storylines that we get in this episode, you'll find that death is a very, very prevalent theme throughout in this entire episode. And you might be saying, well, duh, like that's a huge theme in every single Game of Thrones episode. And I would say yes, but I don't mean literal death, you know, I don't mean death in a literal sense. Although we do get that by the ending. If you pay attention to the different storylines, death is brought up in a much more figurative sort of sense. So if you take aside the fact that this episode opens with a girl getting shot on the leg and then being torn to bits by a couple of dogs, you'll find that death is also present through the character of Theon, except his name isn't Theon anymore, it's Reek. Which, to me, that symbolizes, again, a figurative sort of death, because he is no longer the person that we were introduced to in season 1 as Theon. He is a completely different person. The torture, the genital mutilation has completely transformed him into this incredibly passive, sort of henchman-type individual that just follows orders and really has no sense of agency because of the traumatic experience that he's gone through. So much so, in fact, that Ramsay can have him shave him without feeling threatened that this guy's actually going to slit his throat. That's how messed up, that's how gone the old Theon is. Ramsay even takes it a bit further by trying to mock him and telling him, oh, by the way, your friend Robb, totally fucking dead, and it's totally our fault. Moving on to another storyline, Bran's sort of side quest. For story progression purposes, it's very simple. You know, it's basically just him, you know, getting some information to keep moving north. But the way the information is delivered to him looked pretty freaking epic. In fact, one of the trailers totally teased the shit out of one of his visions in showing that part where the dragon shadow is flying over the Red Keep in King's Landing. Kind of like a very misleading way of making the viewers think that the dragons were going to invade Westeros this season. Anyway, in terms of again, the figurative presence of death, the sequence, Bran's sequence starts with him possessing Summer and you know, hunting a deer. The key point of that moment is this. After he comes back, he is told that if he keeps doing it, and if he keeps using his ability to the extent to which he's using it right now, he will lose himself. He will forget about his sisters, he will forget about his past, he will forget essentially what it means to be human, which one could argue is another way of how a person could figuratively speaking, die. Then we go to Stannis' storyline, and the whole dinner table scene was just mad awkward, dude. On one hand, you have Stannis' wife sitting next to him talking about fish and shit, and then in the corner, you know, just veiled in shadow is Melisandre, looking like she's about to give birth to another smoke monster vagina baby. Anyway, the reason why I think it's a good sequence, specifically when Melisandre goes and talks to Stannis' daughter, is because there's some theological exposition in regards to two of the major religions of Westeros. One in regards to the seven gods and the seven hells, which is, you know, that's part of like the sort of like spirituality or I guess religion that the Starks subscribe to. At least most of them did. Arya, I'm pretty sure, is following the Valar Morguli sort of, you know, doctrine of like there's only one God and his name is death, and the only thing we say to death is not today. So there's that, the seven gods and the seven hells, and Melisandre's take of like the Lord of Light and everything else, including, you know, the mortal world, which, according to her, is hell. Those are two very interesting and unique types of theological approaches within this fictitious world of Westeros. And I'm beginning to sort of, I don't know if you see it, but I've seen some correlations between the doctrine of the Lord of Light and Christianity. So I'm wondering if George R.R. Martin took some of the thematic or, you know, different sort of things from Christianity and applied it and made a fictitious religion. Because, you know, in the way that Melisandre talks about this sort of thinking and ideology, you view the world as full of sin, right? Which is something that, you know, Christianity, that's usually how it frames it as well. And you know that there's an afterworld. There's like some other place in which you go to. That's why she said that the reason why the people were burning and they needed to be burned was, you know, because of a cleansing that needed to take place so that they could just be free. Which I relate to the Inquisition. So once again, within the same episode, it's another way of framing death within a different context. Now on to the wedding. First of all, I do not believe Bronn's words to Tyrion when he says that Shae is gone. I mean, no. If she were gone, it would have been shown in the show. Like, so as far as I'm concerned, Shae is still in King's Landing. That girl is really stubborn. Second of all, is Tyrion is just in a bad fucking situation. So, but he's been imprisoned before, right? The trailers showed him in cuffs. But the point that I'm getting at is that if Cersei or Tywin in this case really wanted to break him, they wouldn't do it by throwing him in a dungeon. They would hurt Shae or do something to just, you know, scar him emotionally. I also want to know what Tywin is thinking after he sees Joffrey collapse, because by the end we do get a shot of him, but he's just super expressionless. It's just like, I mean, I know he's used to death and all this type of shit, but it's like, I mean, I really want to know how he's internalizing this mentally in terms of like, okay, what's our next play? There was some really good acting in this episode. Shout out to the guy who does Theon, Lena Headey, who does Cersei. Even the guy who plays Joffrey, I mean, he did such a good job at bringing to life one of the most hated characters in all of fiction. This is just a quote I decided to include. It's from G.R.R. Martin, and in it he just adds more depth to, like, you know, Joffrey's death. You know, as opposed to like viewing it as something to celebrate or something to be happy about, it really like poses the question of, well, if we hate him because we think we're decent or moral human beings, and we don't feel a sense of pity for this death, are we really that decent? Just one last thing before I go into the explanation about the poisoning. In this episode, Sansa, before shit goes down, Sansa gets invited by Olenna Tyrell to go and eventually visit Highgarden, okay? So, that might be a place that she might eventually head to seek shelter if she is, in fact, you know, being actively persecuted. Now I'm going to get into the explanation. So if you don't want to know who killed Joffrey, who was behind the entire operation, how it went down, then you can just, you know, leave me a comment, a like if you can, and that'll be a day for you. Thank you. All right, first of all, the scene was totally meant to be misleading in the fact that, you know, you had like Tyrion like handing Joffrey cups left and right, pouring him shit, and then at one point like Joffrey even throws his goblet under the table, and we see Sansa pick it up and give it to Tyrion as well. So it's deliberately, you know, just made confusing. One final time, spoiler alert, leave the video if you don't want to know how things went down. Okay, so the actual planning of what took place didn't start in this episode. It started in last week's episode. And it started in the scene, well, I mean, we were exposed to it in the scene where Olenna Tyrell is talking to Marjorie about jewelry and getting a good necklace. That same episode, Sansa is intercepted by Joffrey's fool and is given a necklace of amethysts. So amethysts are indeed purple, which is where the wedding gets its nickname from. But this is the scene that really matters. It's when Lady Olenna goes and talks to Sansa, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry about your brother and the way that he died. You know, only a monster would kill somebody at a wedding." It's kind of fucking ironic that she says that, because as she's fiddling with Sansa's hair, she's actually loosening one of the amethysts, one of the stones, and she takes that with her. And if you look at Sansa's necklace, you'll find that one of the beads of her necklace is gone. At least if you look at her necklace after that scene takes place. Now, like I said, all of this, the way the scene is structured and written is meant to be absolutely fucking distracting. So what really matters, though, is the part where Marjorie says, "Oh, look, the pie." If you look at that scene, go back to the episode, Joffrey gives Marjorie his goblet and she puts it down. But she doesn't put it down where Joffrey sits down. She puts it on the end where Olenna Tyrell is sitting, where her grandmother is. Now, we don't get to see old Lady Tyrell actually put the poison in Joffrey's cup. But the next time Joffrey requests a drink from Tyrion, Tyrion grabs the goblet and it's already full, which is kind of, it's convenient, right? Given the fact that Tyrion has been filling this shit up throughout pretty much almost the entire part of the banquet, right? And he gives that to Joffrey and he fucking collapses. The Tyrells are like really fucking good actors in this. I mean, they're acting within acting, because it's like they have to pretend to be the Tyrells, these actors, but at the same time they also have to pretend to be concerned over Joffrey. And like Marjorie's like, "He's choking," and then Olenna Tyrell's like, "Idiots, help your king," even though, I might have had something to do with that. I thought the episode was really good, not just because of the cliffhanger at the end and the shocker, but because of the thematic sort of things that I already talked about. Leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Leave me a like, and if you like Game of Thrones and Naruto or One Piece and other types of discussions, subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate that. Bye.